Have you ever felt like you're being watched? Not by a camera, but by eyes waiting for your first mistake. That environment where your success feels like an offense to others. Where your competence doesn't generate applause, it paints a target on your back. The pressure to be perfect because you know, if you slip just 1 millimeter, they will devour you. Daniel lived this, not for a day, but for 80 years, and now, the siege was closing in. Daniel isn't the young boy who arrived in Babylon anymore. He is an elder. His hair is white as snow, his steps are slower. But his mind? His mind is sharper than a general's sword. King Darius plans to place him above everyone else, and that is exactly what ignites the hatred in the corridors. The tall poppy syndrome kicks in. The mediocrity of the crowd cannot stand the excellence of the individual. They scoured his life. They looked for fraud, corruption, lies. They dug up the past. But the anguish of his enemies was this: they found nothing. Daniel wasn't perfect, but he was whole, and his integrity was a mirror that exposed their own rot. If they couldn't find a fault in Daniel's professional life, they needed to manufacture a trap in his spiritual life. The strategy was brutal: weaponize his faithfulness to God and turn it into a crime against the state. The decree was signed. The law of the Medes and Persians is irrevocable. The trap was set. Now, they just had to wait for the old prophet to do what he always did. Here, most of us would panic. The reptilian brain would scream, "Hide! Pray in silence! Close the blinds! God knows your heart. You don't need to expose yourself." Let's step inside Daniel's mind now. Daniel feels the fear. The fear of death is biological, but he processes this fear with impressive speed. He understands that closing the window would be agreeing that King Darius has authority over his connection with the eternal. He realizes that changing his routine would mean that the fear of men is greater than his reverence for God. He doesn't decide to rebel. He decides to remain. It wasn't a political decision, it was a vital necessity, like breathing. He could have closed the curtains. No one would know. But Daniel opens the windows, not to be seen by men, but because he has nothing to hide. The enemies saw a crime. Heaven saw an act of love. The guards storm the room. Brutality interrupts peace. Daniel is taken. The hands that were praying are now bound. But look closely at his face as he is dragged away. Do you know what scares me about this story? The ease with which we close our windows when we feel pressured, at work, at college. When the environment is hostile, our tendency is to camouflage ourselves, to become a secret agent of our own faith. Daniel teaches us that integrity has a cost. It cost him his freedom that day, but the price of selling out who you are is much higher. He went to the pit as a free man, but how did he manage to stay calm while walking toward death? Daniel had a mental method, a way to silence the reptilian brain and activate the spirit. If you feel like anxiety is devouring you before the problems even arrive, I have decoded this method for you. It's called the Daniel Protocol. Don't wait for the lions to attack. Download the guide in the link below and learn how to build an armored mind. I'll see you in the next episode, Inside the Den. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when you realize you are completely alone. The stone has been rolled shut. The seal has been set. The world above has washed its hands of you. Have you ever felt buried alive? Maybe not in a pit, but under a pile of debt, under a depression that blocks out the sun, or a grief that feels like a tomb. The feeling that no one is coming to save you. Daniel is now in the VIP section of death. Most men would be screaming, clawing at the walls, begging King Darius for mercy. But remember, Daniel entered this pit with his head held high. The question isn't, will he survive? The question is, how will he remain sane in the dark? Look at the irony. Upstairs, King Darius sleeps in silk sheets, surrounded by guards, yet he is terrified. He is the prisoner of his own guilt. Downstairs, Daniel sits on cold dirt, surrounded by monsters, yet he is calm. The king has power, but no peace. Daniel has no power, but total peace. This proves a psychological truth. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the presence of order within the chaos. Darius is free on the outside, but captive on the inside. Daniel is captive on the outside, but free on the inside. Let's not romanticize this. These are apex predators. Their instinct is to kill. They can scent the blood pumping in the old man's veins. They circle him. This is the moment where biology screams, the adrenaline dump, the fight or flight response. A lion attacks when it senses weakness. They are waiting for Daniel to run. But Daniel doesn't run. He doesn't flinch. Why? Because he isn't looking at the lions. This is the Daniel protocol in action. He acknowledges the reality. There is a lion, but he superimposes a higher reality. There is a God. He regulates his breathing, box breathing. In, hold, out, hold. He denies the lions the one thing they need to attack, his fear. When you focus on the problem gets bigger. When you focus on the provider, the problem shrinks. Daniel isn't using positive thinking. He is using spiritual authority. The atmosphere shifts instantly. The smell of death is replaced by the smell of ozone and rain. The lions yawn. The hunger is gone, replaced by a supernatural heaviness. They lie down. And then Daniel does the unthinkable. The miracle wasn't the lions disappearing. The miracle was Daniel resting in the middle of them. God didn't take him out of the pit to give him peace. He gave him peace inside the pit. Daniel sleeps, the sleep of the just. While the king stays awake, can you imagine sleeping like that? Using your biggest problem as a pillow. You don't need a softer mattress. You need a stronger mind. Stop living like Darius. Start sleeping like Daniel. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on the bell. Join our community to silence modern chaos with ancient wisdom. See you at the judgment. They say the darkest hour is just before the dawn. For King Darius, this was the longest night of his life, a night of guilt, silence, and fasting. For Daniel, however, it was a night of supernatural rest. The sun is rising over Babylon, and with the light comes the truth. There is a moment in every crisis where speculation ends and reality hits. The stone is about to be rolled away. Is there a corpse down there? Or a miracle? Look at the faces of the accusers. They are confident. They trust in the brutality of nature. Lions eat men. It's a simple equation. The king approaches the edge. His voice trembles. He doesn't sound like a monarch. He sounds like a frightened child. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God been able to deliver you? O king and live forever. My God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me. He rises from the grave. Physically, he is the same man, but spiritually, he is now untouchable. The lions didn't touch him because they didn't recognize him as prey. They recognized him as a master. Psychologically, this is the most impressive part. Daniel has no PTSD, no trauma response. Why? Because he never accepted the identity of victim. An armored mind doesn't just survive the battle, it filters out the damage. He walks out of the pit without even the smell of the pit on him. From justice is a boomerang. The trap they dug for the righteous man now waits for them. The king gives the order, not out of cruelty, but out of retributive justice. The conspirators are thrown in. The lions were not tamed. They were just restrained by God for Daniel. Once the protection is lifted, nature takes its course. The lesson is brutal but clear. Be careful when you dig a grave for someone else. You might be measuring it for yourself. Daniel survived the night, but more than that, he thrived in it. He proved that when your mind is armored, external pressure validates you instead of crushing you. We watched him handle the office politics, the fear of death, and now, the final vindication. This is the power of a mind in tune with the Creator. If this story helped you find peace today, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell. Our journey through the deepest secrets of the human mind is just beginning. Get ready. I'll see you in the next story.